Page 74, Monday, August 29th. Zeitoun woke late. He couldn't believe his watch. It was after 10 a.m. He hadn't slept that late in years. All the clocks had stopped. He got up, tried the light switches in 3 rooms. The power was still out. The wind was strong outside, the sky still dark. The rain was coming down, not heavily, not enough to keep Zeitoun inside much of the day. He ate breakfast and checked for any other damage to the house. He put buckets under 2 new leaks. Overall, the damage had remained at about the level it had been at before he fell asleep. He had slumbered through the worst of the hurricane. Through the windows, he could see the streets were covered with downed power lines and fallen trees and about a foot of water. It was bad, but not much worse than a handful of storms he could remember. In Baton Rouge, Kathy brought her kids to Walmart to stock up on supplies and buy flashlights. Inside, there seemed to be more people than products. She'd never seen anything like it. The place had been bought out, the shelves nearly bare. It looked like the end of the world. The kids were scared, holding on to her. Kathy looked for ice and was told that the ice was long gone. Improbably, she found a package of 2 flashlights, the last one, and reached for it a split second before another woman did. She gave the woman an apologetic smile and went to the checkout counter. In the afternoon, the wind and rain calmed. Zeitoun went outside to explore. It was warm, over 80 degrees. He estimated there were 18 inches of water on the ground. It was rainwater, murky and gray-brown, but soon he knew it would drain away. He looked in the backyard. There was the canoe. It called to him. Floating and ready, it was a rare opportunity, he thought, to be able to glide over the roads. He had only this day. He bailed the water resting in the hole, and in his t-shirt and shorts and sneakers he stepped in. Leaving the yard was difficult. A tree across the street had been ripped from its roots and lay across the road. Branches spread over his driveway. He paddled around them and looked back at the house. No great damage to the exterior, some shingles missing from the roof, the windows broken, a gutter that would need remounting. Nothing too bad. 3 days' work. In the neighborhood, other homes had been hit by all manner of debris. Windows had been blown out. Wet, black branches covered cars, the streets. Everywhere, trees had been pulled out of the earth and lay flat. The quiet was profound. The wind rippled the water, but otherwise all was silent. No cars moved, no planes flew. A few neighbors stood on their porches or waded through their yards, assessing damage. No one knew where to start or when. He knew he would be giving many estimates in the coming weeks. He paddled only a few blocks before he began to have second thoughts. There were power lines down everywhere. What would exposed lines do if they made contact with his aluminum canoe? Besides, there wasn't enough water to paddle much. In some parts of the neighborhood, there was scarcely any water at all, only a few inches. He ran aground, got out, turned the canoe around, and paddled back home. Throughout the afternoon, the water flowed from the streets a few inches an hour. The drainage system was working. By that evening, the water had receded completely. The streets were dry. The damage was extensive, but really no worse than a handful of other storms he could remember. And it was over. He called Kathy. "Come back," he said. Kathy was tempted, but it was already 7 o'clock. They were about to eat dinner, and she knew she wasn't about to drive through the night again with 4 kids and a flatulent dog. Besides, there was no power in New Orleans, so they would be returning to the same situation they were suffering through in Baton Rouge. The kids were still enjoying the time spent with their cousins. The laughter rattling the house was testament to it. She and Zeitoun agreed to talk about it again in the morning, though they both expected Kathy to be packing up the kids sometime the next day. She went outside, and the combined families, 3 adults and 8 kids, ate hot dogs by candlelight. That her sister had put pork on the table didn't go unnoticed, but Kathy vowed not to make an issue of it. Better let it go, she said to herself. Let it go, let it go. She had so many battles to fight. There would be so many more in the coming days. She was sure that she couldn't expend her energy on her sisters, on hot dogs. If they wanted to serve her children pork, they could try. Later, when Kathy went to the car to steal a few moments with the radio, she heard Mayor Nagin echoing her reluctance to return. "Don't come back yet," he said. "Wait to see what the damage is until everything is settled and cleaned up. Give it a day or 2. In the afternoon, Zeitoun got a call from Adnan, a second cousin in Zeitoun's mother's side. Adnan had done well since immigrating over a decade earlier. He owned and managed 4 Subway franchises in New Orleans. His wife, Abir, was 6 months pregnant with their first child. You still in the city? He asked, assuming Zeitoun was. Of course I am. You in Baton Rouge? Zeitoun asked. I am. Adnan had driven up the night before with Abir and his elderly parents. How is it there? Windy, Zeitoun said. Really? It's a little scary. He would never have admitted this to Calathi, but he could confide in Adnan. You think you'll stay? Adnan asked. Zeitoun said he planned to, and offered to look after Adnan's shops. Before Adnan had left the city, he emptied the cash registers at the City Park Avenue location and made sure bread was baked. He'd assumed he'd be back on Tuesday. You know any mosques in Baton Rouge? Adnan asked. All the motels were booked, and he and Abir knew no one in Baton Rouge. They'd been able to place Adnan's parents in a mosque the previous night. But there were already hundreds of people there sleeping on the floors, and they couldn't accommodate more. Adnan and Abir had spent the night in their car. I don't, Zeitoun said, but call Kathy. She's with family. They'll take you in, I'm sure. He gave Adnan her cell phone number. Zeitoun emptied all of the buckets in the house, put them under the holes in the roof again, and got ready for bed. It was warm outside, stifling inside. He lay in the dark. He thought about the strength of the storm, its duration, how oddly minimal the damage had been to his house. He went to the front window already at 8 o'clock, and the streets were dry as bone. All that effort to flee, and for what? Hundreds of thousands of people rushing north for this. A few inches of water, all of it now gone. It was quiet that night. He heard no wind, no voices, no sirens. There was only the sound of a city breathing as he breathed, weary from the fight, grateful it was over.